So, hi, my name is Alapi Castillon, and okay, for in this video is QB and I, the group 3, we're going to discuss about profiles, password, privileges, roles in MySQL database. Okay, so the objectives will be first is we will going to define and implement the concepts of user, profile, role, password, and privilege in the context of information technology and database management in MySQL Server. The next one will be define and differentiate the types of users. The next one is differentiate the differences of profiles and user, then implement with MySQL. And the next one is discuss the importance of user management and access control in ensuring the security and integrity of databases and other IT systems. The next one is explore the different levels of permissions and privileges that can be assigned to control user access to specific database objects in MySQL. Then the next one is where we will also gonna going to explore the several types of passwords that can be used to authenticate user accounts in a database MySQL server. The next one is also we will going to define, discuss, and differentiate the differences of authentication and authorization. The next one will also be where we will going to explore the different types of privileges that can be assigned to users, such as read, write, execute, and administrative privileges, and how they can be used to control access to data and features. And then the last one will be discussed the best practices for creating and managing user accounts, including password policies, account expiration, and account review processes. So here for the first one, okay, so user. So we're going to discuss user. So user in the context of database management, a user is an account that is created within a database management system such as MySQL that provides access to the system for an individual or application. A user is typically has a unique username and password that is used to authenticate and authorize access to specific resources such as databases, table, and stored procedures. So meaning a user is an account, okay? It is a certain account of a system or an app, somewhat like an application. Like example, just to make it clear, it is just an account. Like for example, Facebook. So right, you're gonna going to create Facebook. So with that, having a Facebook will give you, okay, you are now a user, okay, meaning you are now a Facebook user. Then with that you are given a privilege or kind of resources or specific resources that a Facebook user could do. Like for example, you can post, you can comment, you can share something like that. Okay, so that is a user. So in a database, or in the, like for example in a database, MySQL database, a user is where that a certain person or certain account could access tables and store some or do other kinds of things that, okay, in that database depending on his or her given privileges. Okay, so that's it. So here we have types of user. So the first one is we have super user. Super user, also called as root user or the administrative user. So this one is it is a type of user that has all privileges and permissions to access and manage the database. It is the most powerful user in MySQL, and by default the super user is the root. Okay, super users have the ability to create, modify, and delete databases and tables, as well as assign permissions and privileges to other users. So like for example, when you're gonna go into okay, like for example, you open the MySQL workbench, okay. So as you open that, the MySQL workbench, you'll see the root, right? The root. So that root is the user. Okay, that is the root user or the super user or the administrative user. So the only thing that you're gonna going to remember or put it on your mind is that that kind of user, I mean that user has all the privileges and permissions. It is somewhat like a boss. Okay, it controls everything. It gives it also is the one who going to assign some permissions and privileges to other users too. Okay, so the next one is we have regular user or ordinary user, it or non-administrative user. This type of user has limited privileges and permissions and can only access and modify the databases and tables for which they have been granted permission. Regular users can execute database queries, but they cannot modify the structure of the database or grant permissions to other users. Okay, so I think it is already understandable here, right? The one major thing that you're gonna going to put in your mind is that this type of user has limited privileges and permissions. Okay, so they can only have an access or can only modify databases if that user has been granted some permission. Okay, has been granted permission by where or by who, by whom? By the, of course, the root user. Okay, so here we have also the anonymous users. So these users who attempt to connect to the MySQL server without specifying a username, they are not granted any privileges by default and can be a security risk. So it's recommended to disable them. So anonymous user. So by the word anonymous, okay. So it's just like a visitor. Okay. So they don't have any privileges. They are not granted any privileges by default. Okay. For the next one, we have the virtual user. So this is a user who is not defined in a MySQL system but can be authenticated by an external system such as the LDAP server, which we will going to discuss later. Okay, so for the next one we have the application user. So this is a user that is created specifically for an application to use when connecting to a MySQL server. This type of user often has a limited set of permissions that are specific to the needs of the application. And okay, so here it is already understandable what kind of user this is. So okay, so here we have I already discussed that a while lately. Okay, so here we have the examples of users. So for the ordinary or regular user, here you can see that a user named John. So the user named John has given permission to read and modify data in the sales database. Okay, right? So a regular user, okay, this kind of user can be granted some permission and privileges by the root user. So in here, in this example in here, the user named John has given the permission to read and modify data in the sales database. Okay, so that is an example of our ordinary or regular user. So for the next one we have super user, or what was that called? The other name was called as root user, right? Or the administrative user. So here, the MySQL root user who has the permission to perform any action on the MySQL server or databases. So meaning the root user controls everything, has the right, or the only thing that has the right to control everything, to give permission or to to allow others to have certain kind of privileges to perform such kind of things in a database. Okay, and here we have the anonymous user. So a user who attempts to connect to the MySQL server without specifying a username. Okay, so this is just a user that who somehow um visit. Okay, it only visit, and then it has no username on it, as that anonymous user tries to visit. Okay, oh yeah, something like that. Okay, so here, profiles. Okay, so in MySQL, a profile is a set of predefined settings that can be applied to a user account to control certain aspects of users' behavior and access to resources. So profiles can be used to limit the amount of resources a user can consume, such as CPU time and memory, or to enforce certain password policies, such as password complexity, requirements, and expiration dates. Okay, so meaning a profile is somewhat like a thing or a setting, a certain setting that could be applied in a user account. So like for example, I will give an example, okay, so that it can be easily understood. Okay, here, okay, like for example, in Facebook, right? In Facebook, so I'm gonna, okay, so we have in Facebook, right? We could also create pages, Facebook pages. So, but you're only allowed to create Facebook pages if you have a Facebook user account. So like, so let's call it, let's say Ella. Okay, the Facebook user account named Ella. So the Facebook user account named Ella has the, okay, as a Facebook user account, you automatically you have already the privilege, or yes, the privilege to create a Facebook page. Okay, it's just up to you if you're going to create a Facebook page or not. So in here, the Facebook user named Ella came on a thought to create a Facebook page. And her Facebook page is called as, let's just say Ella's coding page. Okay, coding page or programming page. So in that page, we have okay, the in that page there are that page can be, can be handled by many. It is just up to Ella if he or she allows someone to access, or to control, or to someone to handle his or her Facebook page. So let's like an admin, right? That kind of thing is called as an admin thing. So let's just say Ella had 3 administrator of that Facebook page, including him or her. So okay, in that okay, so Ella created okay, a setting to apply on her Facebook page, a setting of where what she could or he could control video streaming video, the yes, in the video streaming, you can limit an amount of resource that could the video or the streaming video could consume. Like for example, you could control the limit of how many or how much resolution that could be applied, right? Or how, like, you can also control like how clear or how fast you would like it to be if that video is being streamed, or if that video could be if you're gonna going to have a streaming or live streaming. Would you let that as that video or streaming video goes end, would you directly post it, or would you directly share it on your stories, or would you directly delete it after it is being end, right? So that is an example, also a kind of setting a limitation of amount, limitation of a certain amount of resource that Facebook page of a user account could consume in this kind of aspect, right? But in a MySQL database, you could consume like the CPU time, like how much speed, or how much certain thing that you could limit on its CPU time, like also its memory also, and any other kinds of things. And one also example of this is the password, setting of password. If would you like to apply a password complexity in this certain user, or would you apply password expiration dates, or any other kinds of things, or would you also apply password security, like to authentication password, something like that, right? So this kind of things, or this kind of settings, are called as profile, or being handled by a profile, which that profile can be then being applied on a certain user account. Okay, so here next is we have types of profiles. So in the MySQL, profiles can be used to configure user-specific settings, such as resource limitations and privileges. So these profiles can be either predefined or custom profiles. So here, predefined profiles. So what is predefined profiles? So these provide a set of default resource limitations and privileges that can be assigned to users. Okay, remember, default. Okay, default resource limitations and privileges. So that is predefined profiles. While custom profiles, on the other hand, it provides more granular control over user-specific settings. These profiles can be created by the administrator and assigned to specific users as needed. So by the word itself, granular control, meaning there's so much kind of controlling factor in the here. Okay, so that is custom profiles. So here we have the following examples of settings that can be configured using predefined profiles. So we have password expiration policies, maximum number of connections per user, maximum query execution time, maximum CPU time per call or session, maximum memory usage per session, and maximum temporary table space usage per session, maximum table locks per session, maximum concurrent transactions per session, maximum disk space usage per session. And here on the other hand, we have the user specific settings that can be configured using custom profiles. We have the resource limitations and privileges specific to a particular application or workload, restrictions on access to specific database objects or commands, custom password policies and settings, additional authentication mechanism such as two-factor authentication. We have also the special network access requirements or restrictions. And for the last one, we also have restrictions on the use of particular SQL statements or query types. So here we can use MySQL profiles to configure other user-specific settings, such as first, password expiration and complexity requirements. Okay, so I think we already know what this is, right? As we are already as we are an IT students, so I bet that we already have a knowledge what kind of things these are, right? And also for the fact that we also have the an experience of creating accounts or social media accounts or accounts in online, so as this is being applied every social media accounts. Okay, and yes, this is very very important for us to apply or to configure or to apply in a user account. So here for the next one, we have the network access restriction. So by the word itself, network access restriction. So okay, so you can use a profile to limit the IP addresses. Okay, you can limit the host name from which a user can connect to the MySQL server, or to require an SSL encryption for connections. So this is most likely about network access restriction, controlling the network life of as user account. Okay, for the third one, we have the query optimization settings. Okay, so by the word itself, query optimization. So if you're going to do such a query, so we must apply optimization in here, so that we could have a balance experience in diving on in using or yes, in using or to let the flow of that user account to have a smooth flow experience. Okay, smooth flow balance experience, because in here it is where you can configure a profile to set query optimization options such as the join or order, buffer pool size, and thread concurrency. Okay, sorry about that. Excuse me for that. Okay, so concurrency for a specific user or group of users. And here for the fourth one, we have the resource allocation settings. So in here, in addition to limiting the amount of system resources that a user can consume, you can also use a profile to allocate specific resources to a user or group, such as a fixed amount of memory or CPU time. And for the last one, we have the auditing and logging settings. So it is where you can configure a profile to enable or disable logging and auditing of user activity, or to require additional security measures such as two-factor authentication. Okay? Now we have the examples of profiles. So here, for the first one, we have a profile name. Okay, so here we have this kind of profile, like it where it limits the CPU time. Okay, so this one, okay, the CPU time limit profile. So here we have a profile named limited CPU. So this profile is the one, or it is where we could apply in a certain user that could restrict the amount of CPU time that a user can use, like where you could apply somewhat like 10 seconds per query, 5 seconds per query, or anything as you wish. Okay, as long as it could have a balance, or as long as it could have a balance or smooth diving experience of a user account in that certain thing, or in a database, or whatever is that, or in an account. Okay, so here for the next one, we have memory limit profile. So we could name this as limited underscore memory. So this profile restricts the amount of memory of a user can use, like which he or she could use somewhat like 1 gig only, 2 gig, or terabyte, or what is it, or how much storage that a user could apply or could use. Like for example, I think, like for example, like the Facebook. So when you're going to use Facebook in the web web thing, in messaging, you are only allowed to send video or upload video in Messenger for like how many minutes? I think 1 or 2 minutes only. While if you're gonna going to use your mobile phone, you're allowed somewhat like how many, or limited only for like I think 15 MB or somewhat like that, right? So I think we already have this kind of experience, okay? Also in Google, in our Google account, we have this limited storage we have, okay? Now here for the password policy profile, so we have the strong underscore post password. So okay, this requires users to have passwords with at least 8 characters, including at least one uppercase letter, one lowercase letter, one digit, and one special character. And I think we already have an experience in this regarding with this, okay? So now next, so we are going to differentiate the differences of profiles and user, and then yes, we're going to implement with MySQL. So here, okay, so that we are not so that it could be easily understood. Okay, so user and profile are different, okay, different thing. So okay, so a user account is created with specific privileges and access right, so that is a user, while profile on the other hand, it is a collection of settings and resource limits that can be assigned to a user account. So user accounts are created for individual users and are used to authenticate and authorize them for accessing the database, while profile on the other hand are collections of settings that can be assigned to one or more users. The next is user accounts have permissions and privileges to perform specific operations in a database, while profile on the other hand, it is the one who set resource limits and settings that affect how the user can interact with the database. Meaning, it is somewhat like the one who controls you on how you as a user could behave in that database, or yes, in that database. Okay, so here for the last one, user accounts have a unique username and password to authenticate to the database, while profiles are not used for authentication but rather to control how a user can interact with the database once they are authenticated. So here, so I think, for in this part right here, this is a code. Okay, it is already provided in here of on how you could create a database, how you could create a user account, and how you could apply certain profile for this certain user that you have created. Okay, so here we have a username, my user. You created this in a local host, and yes, it is identified by my password. So my password, it sets a password. So the next one, grant all privileges. So it grants all privileges on its my database from from this user to this user. It grants privileges on how that user behaves on that database, on how he or she interact with that database. So for you to check where the user is, you just follow this code provided in here, select user and the current user, and then it will show this kind of it will then show this one right here. This one like this, the user concurrent user. Username is what? My user at localhost. Current user, you are using the my user localhost. So how do you delete profiles? So of course it is very easy. You're just going to use the drop profile my profile syntax right here below. So here, this is for you how to implement user accounts and profiles in MySQL. So what you can see right here, we already created a user account, name, username. So that after that, we could create a profile. So in here we created a profile name, profile underscore name. So what does this profile name do or going to control? This profile controls or set a limitation regarding of its resource, password, session, and connect, and then it will also show the max value of it. Okay? And also for you to assign a profile to a certain user, you're just going to use this one, the last syntax right here, the alter user username at localhost profile name. So alter user, this is how you assign a profile to a certain user account. So now here we're now in password. So a password is a secret code that is used to authenticate and authorize access to a user account or resource. In MySQL, passwords are typically stored as encrypted hashes in the user table of the MySQL system database. And it is very important to know to choose strong passwords and protect them from unauthorized access, as compromised passwords can lead to security breaches and data loss. So in MySQL, a password is a secret string or of characters that is used to authenticate a user and control their access to the database. And when a user creates an account in MySQL, they must set a password that will be stored in MySQL user table. The password is encrypted and stored as a hash value, which is a one-way mathematical function that transforms the password string into a fixed length sequence of characters. When the user attempts to connect to the MySQL server, their password are compared to the stored hash value to verify their identity. If the passwords match, the user will then be authenticated and be granted access to the database. So MySQL provides several functions and utilities for managing passwords and user accounts. So here we have several types of passwords that can be used to authenticate user accounts. Here we have plain text passwords. From the word itself, plain text. So meaning it's just a plain text. So like for example, here we have the example password, which is password 123. So this will be stored as on its same plain text as it is being typed. So meaning the password 123, the password you have created 123, if you're going to log in or to sign it up, this kind of password, it will just then store on its plain text way, meaning password 123 will be the same password that will be stored in the database, which is not that very secure, right? Okay, now here for the hash password, this is a certain method where a password is hashed before being stored in the database. The hashing process converts the password into a fixed length string of characters, making not just difficult but very very difficult to reverse engineer the original password. So we have this MySQL several hashing algorithm, the MD5, the SHA1 or SHA1, and the SHA2, which can be used to hash the password. So as the example that I have mentioned earlier, the password 123, in hash password, this is being stored differently, not on its plain text way. So it could be somehow like ABCD something like that, like in a different character, many characters, different kinds of characters, special characters are being applied just to make sure that will be very very hard for us to reverse engineer the original password, which is a very very great one kind of password. And it somehow it applies great security in a database. So here like for example, password 123, it could be hashed with this with this long value in here, many different kinds of characters and numbers being applied in here. Okay, so instead of its original password, it is being stored in this way. So it's a very nice kind of implementation, or yes, it is a very nice kind of implementation in a database, because it 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 applies great security. Now we also have salted password, which is also very nice kind of implementation, because this in this method, a random string of characters known as salt is added to the password before hashing, which makes it even more difficult for an attacker to crack the password through brute force methods. So instead of the password 123, so a salt value such as salty123 could be added. Now there's another kind of algorithm, yes, kind of algorithm, like for example SHA-2 algorithm will be applied from then, like, yeah, like, okay, so you can see this below. So the password will now be stored in this way instead of its original one. Okay, so here we also have the encrypted password. In this method, the password is encrypted using a secret key or passphrase before being stored in the database, and this is more secure method than yes, it is also very secure one. And I think we already have this kind of experience within our social media accounts. Okay, so now here we have this. Okay, this is how we create a user with a password in a MySQL server. Okay, so this is the syntax code for you how to create. Okay, now here we have authentication and authorization. So we have this two main steps in controlling access to data. So authentication is the one who confirms users of confirm users are who they say they are, while authorization, it gives users permission to access a resource. Authentication, it is the process of authentication involves verifying the credentials of a user, such as the username and password, before granting access to the database. So as what you can see in the picture right here side on this we have username and password, enter code, right? So these are kinds of credentials that that a user should provide before you will be authenticated, or yes, before you will be before you will able to access your account. You must prove that you are the one who owns that account. Then in that way, by proving it, you must provide your credentials. So yes, okay, provide several authentication methods, including the use of native authentication through external sources such as LDAP or Kerberos, and the use of SSL or TLS for secure connections. So we have types of external authentication. The smart card uses PIN for authentication, Kerberos using symmetric key cryptology, public key infrastructure (PKI), and a digital certificate. And yes, I think we already have this kind of experiences. And also, as what you can see in the pictures right here shows the types of kinds of external authentication. Okay, so here yes, authentication can be verified a few times and at different levels during single logon attempt. The three levels are OS level, database level, and the third-party support. So the third-party applications can add security to authentication process. They may use password encryption to keep network environment secure. So what is this? So encryption scrambles your password, so it is unreadable or unusable by hackers. That simple step protects your password while it's sitting in a server, and it offers more protection as your password zooms across the internet. Imagine that you've created the strongest password possible. So here, password encryption, like safe password. Your password is safe password. It is encrypted in that way. So to make things more difficult for an attacker could do. Okay? So, okay, authentication is somewhat like ask you, who are you? Okay? Who are you? So you'll say, yeah, yeah, I'm Ella. So it will then somewhat say, okay, so if you're Ella, could you provide something that could prove that you are Ella? Okay, then in what way will you prove yourself that you are Ella? So of course you're going to provide, or yes, you're going to provide some credentials for your identification to prove that you are Ella. So what? In what way? Like, yes, I will provide IDs or what? IDs, government IDs. In here, you're going to provide your username and password to prove that you own the user account named Ella. Okay. So here for authorization, it is a user scopes. So it asks here, can you do that? It's somewhat like it controls, or it is somewhat like an privilege, something like that. So if you are okay, so Ella, so if you're Ella, so your scope is somewhat like you are only allowed to post, you're allowed to comment, you're allowed something like that. It's just the ability, what kind of ability that you could perform in that certain account. Okay? Here, yes, authentication. So we have this. Okay, it is already yes, kanang dali ra siya masabtan dire nga kan nga ano. Okay, you are a visitor, then you will be then authenticated identities, then authorize the identities. Okay, so in here, authentication is the process of verifying who a user is through login or passwords. It works through passwords, biometrics, and other information provided or entered by the user. It is visible or partially changeable by the user. Data is transferred through ID tokens. Authentication is usually done before authorization. And when, okay, so here we have a example right here. So like me as a college student in my MSU Naawan. Okay, so as I walk into the campus, into our campus, so how, okay, remember that, okay, one first thing is that a guard will ask you, or ask, yes, it will somewhat like ask you if are you really a Naawan student or MSU Naawan student. Are you really an MSU Naawan student? Then so you will then somewhat like, yeah, yes, I am a student in this university. So and then the guard will somewhat like ask, okay, so if you're a student in here, could you provide something that could prove that you're a student in here? So what are those things that you could showcase your identity, that you could be authenticated as a student of the institution? What are those things? First is the ID, right? Your ID. He will show your ID. And another option is your COR, right? Certificate of registration. And in that way, you're now authenticated as a student of the institution, and you are now allowed to enter the campus to be, or to, yes, to as a student there. So in an authorization in here, so once I am now a student, then so once I am now authenticated as a student of MSU Naawan, so I walk, as I walk there on the campus. So what are my authorization as a student? My authorization as a student is where I will go to the buildings where I'm allowed to. So what buildings are you allowed to go, or yes, to settle on? So those buildings or classrooms that I am or being put in my CUR. Like for example, like for example, me as an IT student. So where should I go? Or what are my authorization as an IT student? I am being given an authorization of where I will go to the DIT buildings, where I am allowed to use the computer laboratories, and things as an IT student. You must perform the IT student things in there. Okay, so you'll act as an IT student. Okay, so those are your kinds of authorization. So meaning, if you're an IT student in there, you are not allowed, you're not authorized to do the teacher kind of stuff. Only those IT student kinds of authorization things you're allowed to. Okay, so this is where authorization plays. Okay, the student does not have access to the professor's cabin or principal's office or any other kinds of things. So here, so I think I already have explained it well. So you just can come back or visit this part right here for more understandable concept about authentication versus authorization. Okay, so here we have the password policy. Okay, so password policies, we have most intrusions originate from a cracked or stolen password. Password policy implementation, it is where organizations' first defense against compromised password can be enforced within database server application, more effective than written policy. And both written and server-defined policies should be used for maximum effectiveness. So here, okay, database and first password policy. So I think we already understand this. We already have this kind of knowledge, right? Because we already have this kind of experience in different kinds of social media accounts. So this is very important for us to apply in a database. We must apply complexity, failed attempts, expired passwords, and password reuse. Okay, so yes, in profile, we have this kind of password policies that you could somehow apply. Okay, in here, okay, you can see already right here, like on how you can control a users, or how you could apply password policy of a certain user, like the password complexity. If it must be containing a mix of letters and numbers, must contain special characters, contain upper and lowercase characters, must have strength rating of at least good, minimum length, expiry period, and for failed attempts, like for example, you are only allowed for like 3 attempts or 5 attempts, and after that your account will then be locked, right? Like for example, Facebook, I think we already have an experience of that. Okay, and for password reuse. Okay, so here, so as what you can see, password expiration and reuse. So the password expires within like every 30 days. We also have the password reuse. Okay, attempts. Okay, so I think it's already understandable right here. Okay, so here we have password discretion, password sharing, and password storage of the common standards likely to be included in an equipment usage agreement. Also, included in equipment usage agreement between an organization and its employees, usage agreement must be flexible enough to be consistently enforced and strict enough to ensure users abide by the policy. Okay, so here for the database vendor specific password management. Okay, so same. So everything are just the same. Okay, so we must apply complexity requirements of all with all in all aspect of our user accounts. Okay, we must apply this. So it's just the same. Okay, it's yeah, the same lang siya. Okay. Okay, same with this also. It's just about password complexity and it's already understandable naman. Okay, so here we have the Oracle or MySQL password related functions. So you apply this, okay? This is the feature, or you could use this syntax code for you to control or apply in the profile that you have created for the password complexity thing, okay, that you're going to set or apply of a user account. So here for authorization refers to the process of granting or denying specific privileges to users or roles, determining what data they can access or modify within the database. MySQL provides various authorization mechanisms, including the use of roles, granting specific permissions to individual users, allowing fine-grained control over database access. So for the process of applying permissions to a user, it ensures user requesting access have permission to, okay? It choosing the most appropriate privileges for each user helps maintain a healthy and secure database. Determine prior to a user obtaining authentication credentials. Here, this is the syntax code, okay, for you on how you are going to set profile and password for the expiration and complexity requirements. Okay, so you must just use this. Okay, and beside on it is we already have this note that we must not forget in creating or applying expiration and complexity requirements for the profile and password for that we're going to use for and applying to a user account. Okay, we must not forget that the alter user, it is this code, or this syntax code is a way for us on how we apply this to how we apply the profile we have created in a certain user account. Okay, this is for expiration and complexity requirements for using default. Okay, now we have the creating profile with default password settings, and we also have the creating a profile with specific password settings. Like, instead of applying a default one, we have set the lifetime specific password settings of where password could have a lifetime for like 60 days, grace time for like 10 days or 10 minutes or what. For the lock time, we have here we have specific days, specific minutes, specific hours, okay, for you to apply. Now we also have the configuring on how to configure password expiration complexity requirements, and we also have the restricting network access. And in here, we have an example of syntax for creating a profile that requires users to use a complex password with a minimum length of 10 characters. So this is how we use it or create it. Now we have a question right here. Are profiles and users in database MySQL are the same? Okay, so a profile and a user are not necessarily the same thing, although they can be related. So In general, a user in a MySQL server or this database refers to a person or entity that has been granted certain privileges or permissions to access and manipulate the data stored in the database. Users are typically created and managed through the MySQL authentication system, which allows database administrator to set up specific access controls for each user. On the other hand, a profile in the MySQL database is usually a collection of data that describes a particular user or entity in the system. This data might include information such as the user's name, contact details, preferences, or other metadata that is relevant to the application or service using the database. So here we have, okay, in storing passwords in MySQL, we have hashing, salt, and complexity. So I think, okay, this is the, okay, important consideration of hashing, salt, and complexity. And I think I have already explained it a while ago, but for more in a detailed way, okay? So hashing, passwords should be hashed before being stored in the database. Hashing is a process of convert yes. Okay, so understandable na kay siya and na-explain na ako kaganina, okay? So here we have password expiration from the word itself, password expiration. It will set expiration for the password of that user account, okay? We have the two-factor authentication. Okay, this is it is a security feature that requires user to provide two forms of identification before being granted access to their account. And I think we already have an idea what is this, because we have already this kind of experience in different kinds of social media accounts, right? Like for example, Google, Facebook, and any other pa. So, user management and access control are essential components of ensuring the security and integrity of databases and other IT systems. Here are some key reasons why. Okay, obviously, it protects sensitive data. For the next one, it ensures compliance. For the next one, mitigating insider threats. Okay? So, from the words itself, it's just somewhat like it protects everything inside of it. Okay, so it protects the data for like an attacks or any other things, knowing that we have sensitive data that needs to be protected. Like for example, in a bank, right? In a bank, we must protect the data in there, datas of those people who have how much savings they have, their datas as of their identities, of yes, I like their names and other kinds of things that needs to be protected, okay, from attackers, from hackers, and for more other kinds of threats. Okay, here for the fourth one, enforcing data governance policies. Okay, user management and access control can help enforce data governance policies such as data retention, data quality, and data ownership. This helps organizations ensure that their data is used appropriately and effectively. And this is very, very important in all aspects of our lives, in all different kinds of industries. So this is very important. And for the last one, facilitating auditing and accountability. User management and access control enable organizations to track who access what data and when. This information is critical for auditing and accountability purposes and can help organizations identify security incidents and take appropriate remedial action. Okay? So I think that's all for my part. So, okay, that's all, and thank you.
Good day, everyone. So I am Desiree Kube, and in my report, I'm going to talk about privileges. So this is the continuation from Ate Ella's report. So privileges. A privilege is a right to execute a particular type of SQL statement or to access another user objects. So there are some examples of privileges includes the right to connect to the database or create a session and create a table, select rows from another user's table. So privileges in MySQL determine what a user can and cannot do within the database. There are several types of privileges that can be granted to a user. So there are 4 privileges that can be granted to a user. There are global privileges, database level privileges, table level privileges, and column level privileges. So let's talk about global privileges. So global privileges, this is the privilege that applies to all database on MySQL server. So in database level privileges, it talks about a specific database on MySQL server. So for table level privileges, it's a privilege that apply to a specific table only within that database. So for column level privileges, this privilege apply to a specific column only for a specific database table. So those are the 4 types of privileges level that privileges can be granted to a user. So here are some examples of the syntax to execute privileges in MySQL. So for granting global privileges, okay, so to grant privileges to a user in MySQL, we have here the syntax. So you can use the grant statement followed by the desired privileges and the username. As you can see, these are the syntax. So you can use the grant statement and whatever privileges you desire to grant. And the user, as you can see, the user here. So at the next syntax, this is the example. So grant, and the privilege the user can have, he or she can have the privilege to select or insert, so to the host name, which is John. Okay, so this time we're going to talk about granting database level privileges. So to grant database level privileges to a user in MySQL, we can use the grant statement. So as what we discussed a while ago, we can use the grant, okay, followed by the desired privileges and the database name and the username. So a while ago, it's a global database. So here we're going to talk about database level. So in this syntax, as we can see, there we have grant syntax here, statement followed by the privileges and the database name, which include here, and to a user. So this example, notice we can see here we have the syntax grant select, insert, update on which database, on employees database, to the user John. Okay, so for example, to grant the select, insert, and update privileges on the employees database to John user, we can use this command statement. And for the granting table level privileges, we can see here, same as before, we can use the command syntax grant followed by the privileges, but remember we should have the syntax here, database name and the database table name and the username. And okay, so let's take a look sa example, grant select, insert, update on database table HR employees, so to the user. So this is it's very simple basic syntax to grant table level privileges to the user. So for the last one, granting column level privileges. Okay, so this time we're going to grant column level. Last time we talked about a table, so here we're going to use to grant column level privileges. So what we're gonna use here is same as before. We're gonna use grant commands, the syntax, followed by the privileges you wanna discard, and the column name. Okay, so as example here, grant select salary on HR employees to John. So this is the very simple basic syntax for granting column level privileges. So here are several types of privileges that can be revoked from a user in MySQL. There are 8 privileges that we can revoke. A while ago, we talked about grant. We grant the privileges to a user. Here, we're gonna revoke. We're gonna cancel the privileges from the user. So what are those privileges? We can revoke select, insert, update, delete, execute, create, drop, and grant. Okay, so there are 7. So here we're gonna use the syntax for revoke. So to revoke a privilege, we can use the revoke statement to followed by the name of privileges you want to revoke. So as you can see here, the revoke statement followed by the privilege name on database name or table name from the user. So from the example, revoke select on my database from my user at localhost. So this is the example how to revoke a privilege. Next, so there are 2 types of privileges, system and object. So let's discuss what is system, what are these privileges. So system enables user to perform particular actions in the database. So it just for particular actions. While object, it is enable user to access and manipulate a specific object. So if system can perform particular actions in the database, for the object also, it can perform or it can manipulate a specific object. So we can differentiate here. System privileges this is the right and the permission that allows a user or a role to perform certain actions or operation on the database as whole. So example of a system privilege include the ability to create or drop tables. So the ability to create or drop user. So as you can notice, create or drop. So system privileges have this permission, have this ability to create or drop tables, create, drop users, create, drop roles, or can grant or revoke privileges from other users or role. So system privileges talks about actions or operations on the database as a whole. So okay, so while object privileges, these are the rights and the permission that allow a user or role to perform certain actions or operation on specific database. Okay, what are these? Such as tables, views, procedures, and functions. So for example of object privileges, include the ability to select, insert, update, or delete data from a table. So it executes a stored procedure or function and create or drop a view. So object privileges, this is the operations for specific objects, as what we talked about a while ago, like tables, views. So object privileges is just only to perform that specific objects. So what are the key difference versus grant and revoke? So grant it is a command that allows providing privileges for the user on the database object. So it allows assigning access to the user. So if grant will allow or the user have the privileges, the right to the user, while revoke, it allows taking back the permission assigned to a user. So allows removing the access from the user. So if grant will gonna allow assigning, will give permission, revoke is the contrast of grant, because revoke is allow for removing the access right from the user. So these are the two difference of grant and revoke. So grant command give the permission to the user. So for the syntax for grant command, this is the generalized syntax for grant. So grant privilege, the desired you want to give to the user on the table name to a username. So example is SQL grant select on M to user 1. So revoke, so it cancels the permission. So the syntax for that command for the revoke is revoke, then the desired privileges on table name and from a user. So example SQL revoke select on M from user 1. So example SQL, so we can revoke select, insert on M from a user, and we can also revoke update. We can revoke select also. So here we're going to talk about roles. So in MySQL, roles are a way of grouping privileges together and assigning them to user. Roles can simplify the task of managing user privileges by allowing you to assign privileges to a role and then assign the role to multiple users. So roles are very important in database because roles can simplify the task of managing user privilege by allowing you to assign privileges to a role. So it is a way of grouping privileges together. So it can simplify, it can help you for managing user privileges. So here are some key points to keep in mind about roles in MySQL. So roles are created using the create role statement. So also roles can be granted using grant statement. So roles can be assigned to a user using the set role, and roles can be revoked user using the set role statement with none option, and also from roles can be dropped using drop role statement. So very simple. So if you wanna create roles, so the statement for that is create role. If you wanna grant privileges for roles, you can use the grant statement. So if you wanna drop roles, you can use the drop role statement. So let's talk about syntax for executing various commands. So for creating a role, very simple one. So to create a new role, you can use the create role statement followed the name of the role. So as you can see in this syntax, it says create role admin. So that's all, very simple. So for example, to create a role named admin, you would use the following command. So create role, so for the role name, which is admin. Okay, next, granting privileges to a role. So we're gonna grant a privileges to that role. So what we're gonna use is grant statement followed by the desired privileges you want to grant. Example here, grant, select, insert, update, delete rather on my database to which role? To admin. So next, creating a user and assigning a role. So for creating a user and then we're gonna assign a role, so this syntax here we're going to use. So create user and username at localhost identified by password, and set default role name for username at localhost. So we can notice here, these are the example. To create a username John with the password 123 and assign the admin role to role them. So you would use the following commands. So create user John identified by 1234, which is the password, and the role is for admin. Okay, that's the syntax for creating a user and assigning a role. So next, how about we're gonna remove a role from a user? What was the syntax for that? So to remove a role from a user, we can use the following. So set default role none for username. So for example, to remove the admin role from the John user, you would use the following command. So set default role none for John at localhost. So for removing the role from a user, so we're gonna remove the role from John, so we're gonna use this syntax, set default role none, so for John at localhost. So that's very simple syntax for removing a role. How about dropping a role? So also very easy to remember. So to drop a role, we can use this syntax, drop role and the role name. So example, drop role admin. So that's just 3 words for the syntax of dropping a role. Okay, so drop role admin, then admin semicolon. That's all. So also, how to revoke roles in MySQL. So we talk about revoke here. So to revoke a role from a user, we can use set default role none for username. So set default role statement with the none option followed by the username. So for example, if you want to revoke the admin role from the John user, you would use the following command. Example, set default role none for John at localhost. So this is very simple syntax to revoke roles. So if you want to revoke John roles, so we can use this syntax, set default role none for John at localhost semicolon. So next, so additionally, we can also use the revoke statement to revoke specific privileges. Okay, for the specific. For example, if you want to revoke the select privileges from the admin role on my database, you would use the following command. So if you want to revoke select, you can use this syntax. So revoke select on my database from admin. So this syntax will remove the select privilege from the admin role, effectively revoking that privilege for all user assigning to the admin role. So next, so here are some additional syntax examples for working with roles in MySQL. So how about for displaying information about existing roles in MySQL? So for displaying information about roles, we can use this statement. So very simple. Also, we can use this syntax, show role admin grants. So this will show you the list of privileges granted to the admin role. Okay, how about listing all roles? So just very easy syntax we can remember. So select from MySQL roles. So this will show you all list of roles defined in MySQL system. How about renaming a role? So to rename a role in MySQL, we can use the rename role statement, okay, followed by the current name of the role and the new name you want to assign to it. So if you want to rename it, so you can use this syntax, rename role admin to super admin. Okay, so as you can see, rename role, this is the syntax, and your current name. So the current name here is the admin, and what you wanna rename. So here the example is she wanna rename it to super admin. So this is the syntax. How about modifying a role? So to modify the privileges associated with a role, we can use the alter role. So as you can see, this is the syntax to alter the role. So alter role, then followed by the role name, grant. So the desired privileges you want to grant to a user. So for example, if you add the create privileges to the admin role, you would use this. So these are the syntax for that specific role. So example, alter role admin, grant, create. So create is the privileges to the admin role. So the admin is the role name, and the privileges is the create here. So roles are important in SQL for several reasons. So let's talk about the reasons why roles are important in SQL. So simplifying privileges management, enhancing security, and facilitating compliance. Enhancing security because roles can also enhance security by limiting access to sensitive data and functionality to only those users who require it. But by assigning privileges to our roles instead of individual users, access can be more tightly controlled and audited, reducing the risk of unauthorized access or data breaches. So these rules are very important in SQL because it can also enhance security. It's because you have the right to give or to grant roles just to specific user. So it reduces the risk of unauthorized access or data breaches. So these are the tables examples for assigning privileges to our roles and assigning roles to a user. We have user here, which is Jenny, David, and Rachel. So there are two roles. So Jenny is the HR manager, and David and Rachel have the roles which is HR clerk. So they have different types of privileges, as you can see. So Jenny, she have the privileges to delete employees or insert employees, while David, he have the privileges to create a job, select employees, and update employees, as well as Rachel also. So this is the role-based access control. As you can see, this is the admin assigned user to appropriate roles, and users are assigned to roles. Okay, next. So we're going to talk about 5 types of roles available within SQL Server. So there are 5, which is fixed server, fixed database, user-defined, application, and the last one, public. So fixed server roles, it provides server level privileges, cannot be changed or deleted. And fixed server roles can be added to them. So user can be added to them. So the roles of fixed server, it cannot be changed or deleted. While fixed database, providing privileges specific to the database and cannot be altered, yet user can be added. Next, user-defined roles applications, roles public role, and application rules created to support security requirements of application, and public role is a special rule in which every database user is a member. Members cannot be removed and provides a way to assign privileges for all users. So, table 6 fixed server roles for SQL Server. As you can see, this is the user account and their permissions for that user. So for example, for sysadmin, the permission for that is a system administration account that holds the right to perform any action as the server level. So the sysadmin have the rights to perform any action at the server level. down to desk admin. So the desk admin, the permission of this user, this desk administration account that holds the right to manage desk file. So on the permission that desk admin can only have is the right to manage desk files only. So table 6.4 fixed database roles for SQL Server. As you can see, there are different types of user accounts, and each user account have also specific user rights. So that's all for my report. Thank you.